This guide is going to cover the plot manager and how to implement it. The plot manager is what holds the entire plot together. Also, it allows players to claim a plot. And lastly, it holds all of the ATMs that are held within the plot. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is add a file to our old plots folder. And I'm going to create a subfolder titled plot manager. Then I'm going to right click on this and make it my current folder. After that, I can go to our content folder in the content browser and find the plot manager here. And once you've dragged it into the play space, you can start filling out the settings. The first is the button manager. This will be the button manager that we've already created. Then the game manager, which will be our full game manager. Then we have a claim plot activator. This is the list of 3 different activating devices that you're able to use. This can be a mutator zone, a trigger, or a button. This is what's used to activate or claim the plot. It should be the same trigger, mutator zone, or button as the first button in your button manager array. So here in our button manager, this is our first trigger. So if I go here, I'm going to select this trigger. The next setting we have is the claim plot selector. If we go to our content browser, this is going to be a class selector device, and then we can drag it into the play space. Here, I'm going to name this plot1 selector, and then I'm going to scroll down until I see team to switch to, enable this, change this from random to team index, and then change this to the number of the plot, because this is going to be my first plot. This will be team index 1. Then we actually need to set up the team. So I will search for a team settings and inventory device and drag this next to my class selector here. In this, scroll down until you find the team setting. Change this to team index and make sure the index that you select here is the same as in your class selector. Then you can change the inventory and other options for this team, but for now I'm just going to rename it and title this plot1 team settings. Then go back into your plot manager and select the class selector that we just created. The next setting is going to be the claim money HUD. This is a HUD message device that will display to the player whenever they claim money from an ATM. So if I go into our content browser and search for a HUD message device and drag it into the play space, I'm going to name this to claim money HUD. And in this, I will change the message recipient from all to triggering player. Then the rest you can manipulate as you'd like. You can change the widget, you can change the text, the sound. You can change a lot in these HUD message settings, but the only thing that is necessary is changing this message recipient to triggering player. Then if we go back and select this in our plot manager, next we have a claim plot player reference. This is going to be a player reference device. If we drag it into the play space, I'm going to title this plot1 player reference. This is going to be a player reference that will display the player who claims the plot. In the settings, you can change the hologram strength, whether or not it'll display their name. There's quite a few options, but nothing's necessary. So let's go ahead and select that here. Next, we have the claim plot HUD. This is going to be a HUD message device that will display to the player whenever they originally claimed the plot. This can be something like, welcome to your house, or anything that will introduce the player to the game that they're playing. To do this, I'm just going to duplicate our already existing HUD message device and I'm going to rename it to claim plot HUD. This is already set to triggering player as we duplicated it, but ensure that this is set to triggering player, and then you can change the message and all the other settings. But let's go ahead and select that. Next, we have a claim plot tracker. This is going to be a tracker that is incremented whenever a player claims a plot. So if I search for a tracker device and drag it into our play space, here you can change the name, the description, as well as the targeting value. You likely want this to be 1, and then stat to track you should change to events. Other than that, you can change the other settings as you would like. But last, I am going to rename this tracker to claim plot tracker. And then I'm going to select this here. Then we have a score manager. So if we go to our content browser and search for a score manager, and then we can drag it into the display space. This is what's going to be used to set the score to a player whenever you have the setting enabled for that resource to be displayed on the in-game scoreboard UI. The only thing we need to change in this device is the score award type. Change this from add to set, and then I'm going to select this here. The next setting is a option to reset the plot whenever the player who has claimed the plot leaves the game. If this is enabled, the plot will reset. If it's not, will not. Next, we have the plot load settings. These are settings that will control whether or not whenever a player goes to claim a plot, if they've already played before, if their plot will load or if they'll get an option or really what will happen. So the first setting is our plot loading. We can either have it off, automatic, so it'll automatically load all of their saved data, or you can change it to optional. This will create a UI that'll display to the player asking if they wish to load their plot or reset their plot. So I'm going to change this to optional. If this is set to optional, we have these three settings: the text image position, the reset button position, and the load button position. So the text image is going to be an image that you can create that'll say something like, you have saved data, do you wish to load or reset? And this position will be used to control where that is on the UI. Then we have a reset button position. This is going to be used to position the button on the UI that will allow the player to reset. And then the final is the same thing except for the load button. Last, we have a button type. This is going to be the type of button for both of these buttons. If it's set to loud, it'll be a loud button, regular, regular, and quiet, quiet. Let's go ahead and minimize that. Last, we have an array of ATMs. So if I go ahead and add an element and drop it down, you'll see the first thing we have is a start ATM trigger. This is going to be the trigger that activates the ATM and enables it to start producing the resources. So for this, I'll click on all and search for a trigger. Then I'll go ahead and drag a trigger in my play space. I'm going to rename this to activate ATM1 trigger and then select it in my device. Next, we have an array of activators that can be used to claim this ATM. So if I go ahead and add an element here, you'll see that each activator could either use a mutator zone, a trigger, or a button. What these are going to be used for is to claim the money inside of this ATM. You can add as many as you would like. So if, let's say, you want to have multiple different ATMs that are holding the exact same amount, but you want different areas in which you can claim them, you would want to add different activators here. I'll go ahead and minimize that though. The next thing we have is the ATM resources. If I go ahead and add an element to this, this is going to be what resources are collected in the ATM. So first, if you select auto collect, that'll make it so that the player does not have to click the claim money activator to be able to claim the money in the ATM. Instead, it'll just automatically collect the resource every single time the ATM loops. So you can either enable or disable that. And then next you have an array of billboards. So these are going to be billboard devices. So if I go to my content browser and search for a billboard and drag it into the play space, I can then rename this to ATM1 billboard. And here you can change the text settings like the size or the sample text, as well as like the outline and the shadow color, but I'm just going to leave it blank. And then I'm going to go ahead and select this here. If you would like to have multiple ATMs that hold the same amount, the same as you would with the claim money activators, each of these you'd want to probably correspond with a billboard. These billboards are going to showcase how much money is in that ATM. But I'll go ahead and minimize this. Then the last thing we have is what resource is being collected. So you can just put the name, like something like money. It's important to note that these ATMs are what will end up collecting the player's idle resource for that resource. But once this is done, you can just go ahead and add as many as you would like, and they will all be collected inside of this ATM. Then we have the ATM speed. This will be how many seconds it takes for it to collect all of the resources inside of the ATM. If you want it to be every second, you would leave it to 1, or you could have it collect like every 30 seconds if that's what you'd like. Then the last thing we have are the pop-up settings for this ATM. This is going to display whenever the player claims money from the ATM. Not if the resource is auto collect, it will not show. If you want to know how to set these up, check out the guide on how to set up a pop-up. That's it for this ATM. Then I can just go ahead and minimize this, and you can add as many as you would like so that you can have multiple ATMs with their own triggers, activators, speed, as well as resources. All right, and that covers the plot manager device.